What do you do when you're experiencing a setback? Probably one of the most common questions I get asked is, hey Shaan, I'm doing really well, but then all of a sudden I had a really bad setback and now I'm questioning everything. I don't know if I'm doing this correctly. My symptoms came back. I don't know how to measure my progress. What do I do? Any advice or any tips? This is something almost every anxiety sufferer is gonna experience on their journey. And so in this video, I really wanna break down, what do you do when you experience a setback? This way, you can actually focus on overcoming anxiety. I see a lot of people that initially will make progress, but every time they have a setback, they go back to square one. They go back into this panic mode, this reactionary mode. They're just not sure what's going on and they can't break through this glass ceiling. So in this video, I really wanna break it down to you so that you can focus on overcoming these symptoms, going back to living, and really having an action plan for what to do when you're experiencing setbacks. So with that said, let's get it started. So before we get started in this video, I'm not really gonna break down the mechanics of anxiety. If you really wanna understand how does anxiety manifest and what you can do to overcome the anxiety symptoms, I'll put a link down below to the desensitization blueprint. This really breaks down how recovery looks like. This is the blueprint that we use essentially when we're helping people overcome their anxiety symptoms. I think this is a great place to start. If you're just new to the channel, or you're new to the recovery journey, or you feel like you've been understanding these concepts, but you need a more graphical representation. If you feel like the desensitization blueprint really helps you and you want that additional help, there's always an opportunity to apply to mentorship later and having me and my team help you on the recovery journey. But in this video, I want to be very specific with how to deal with setbacks. Now, before we get started, it's really important to ask yourself, what is a setback? How do you define a setback? And the reason why I'm asking you this is because a lot of people on the recovery journey, I find, don't really define setbacks correctly. A lot of people think that anytime they have a bad day, it's a setback. Anytime they're having a good day, that's good. And anytime they're having a bad day, hey Shaan, I'm having a setback. Is there anything you could tell me? Oh, I'm in the middle of a setback. And every time I look at their situation, it's like they've gone through 1,000 setbacks. And I say, well, that's not really how setbacks work. So the first thing to do is really understand, what is a setback? How do you define a setback? And how I define a setback is when really you're making a ton of progress. This typically happens when you're on the recovery journey for a while. When you're actually making progress, you're making milestone achievements on your recovery journey. For me, I wasn't able to leave my house. I had lost 45 pounds. I was getting such intense symptoms. I was getting so many panic attacks that my body essentially stopped producing them. And what happened was, as I was starting to get better slowly, because I was figuring it out on my own, unfortunately, but I was still making some progress. It was just extremely slow. What would happen was I was going back to living. Some of my symptoms started dropping off. I started doing more and more things. I learned how to respond, and I could see almost like the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll keep getting better. And then all of a sudden, I would just experience all the symptoms coming back at once. It's like all the progress I had made just went out the window. And it was not just considered a bad day. It was like a true, all my symptoms came back at once. It wasn't like, oh, okay, I've had bad days before. This wasn't a bad day. This was like everything kept rushing back. And when that happened, I would always think to myself, am I ever gonna get out of this? Because this was my biggest fear. My biggest fear was, is this a life sentence? Is this always gonna be something I'm always gonna be dealing and managing for the rest of my life? There's no way anybody can deal with this long term. There's no way. And so whenever I would have a setback in particular, it would be that reminder. It would remind me of this fact that maybe I couldn't get out of this. Maybe this was always going to be something I dealt with. So the first thing to realize is setbacks really happen when you are in the recovery journey. You're making a lot of progress, and you have these moments in your recovery where it feels like you're back to square one. Now, a lot of these times that people try to define setbacks when they're in the moment. What I've actually found is that you are able to identify setbacks when you're looking backwards on your recovery journey. When you're in the recovery journey, it's hard to notice when you're in a bad day or when you're in a setback. But then when you look backwards on your recovery journey, where you've made a bunch of progress, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember having a setback then. Now, the good news is that, and I'll define this later on, is that whether it's a bad day or a setback, the response is still the same. And I'll break that down a little bit more. But I want to talk about, why do setbacks happen? Why is it when you're going through the anxiety recovery journey, you experience setbacks, right? Like if you get a cold, you don't really experience setbacks, you get better over time, right? If you break a bone, it heals over time. Why is anxiety recovery something where you make progress and then, you go back, it's like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back? Well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that what you're really dealing with is a nervous system sensitization issue, meaning your nervous system is hyperstimulated. And it's also important to understand that your nervous system is very dynamic throughout the day. It changes based on what your stress levels are, what your activity levels are. So it's always fluctuating, it's always moving. And so when you're experiencing a setback, what happens is you'll experience a trigger. Whether you know what that trigger is or not doesn't really matter for this video, but whatever triggers you, your nervous system does almost like an exaggerated response. It almost feels like, okay, well, Shaan's in this fight or flight mode. This is another stress test. This is another stress response. We're going to go and bring everything back. And as a consequence, you experience your symptoms. So you have to understand that your nervous system is trying to learn how to re-regulate itself. And because of that, sometimes it will overshoot and sometimes it will undershoot. Now, that being said, if you have truly experienced setbacks, you really should give yourself some time to congratulate yourself, because only people that are making true progress experience setbacks. And it's also important to understand that setbacks are part of the recovery journey. There is no way around them. There is no situation where you're going to go through the recovery journey where you're not going to experience setbacks. And so the point of that is not to really scare you, but it's really there to tell you that, hey, this is part of the healing. This is part of the process, right? If you really want to focus on overcoming this, this is part of it. And you should be looking more at setbacks as what we call opportunities. And I'll break that down a little bit more later. So you might be wondering, okay, what do I do now when I have a setback? What are the first few things that I can do to really help streamline my recovery journey so that I can break through these setbacks? Well, the first thing you should always do, again, assuming you've gotten everything rolled out by your doctor and you're actually experiencing anxiety symptoms, there's nothing really medically wrong with you. They might just tell you to, hey, relax, calm down. And so if that's the case, you're really experiencing a hyperstimulated nervous system or sensitized nerves. So the first thing you can do is, when you're experiencing a setback, it's the same principle that you should be doing even when you're not experiencing your setback, which is, don't monitor your progress based on your symptoms. So many people end up reaching out to me when they're in the middle of a setback and they're saying, hey, I'm in a setback, I don't know what to do. And I ask them, how are you defining your progress right now? Well, I'm feeling all my symptoms. I'm getting the dizziness, I'm getting the nausea, I'm getting the vertigo, the digestive issues came back, Shaan, the blurred vision came. And so I feel like I'm never gonna get out of this. And so what are they doing right here? They're measuring their progress based on their symptoms. Now, I understand you want the symptoms to go away, but that happens as a consequence. But if you're focusing on anxiety recovery, you should be focusing on, okay, how are you responding here? That should be your benchmark, because like I mentioned, anxiety is going to be a 3-step forward, 2-step back process. And if you're always going to monitor based on your symptoms, you're never going to go anywhere. You're almost like hitting the gas pedal and you're hitting the brake at the same time, because you're trying to use your North Star as your symptoms. So the first thing to do is, don't measure your progress based on your symptoms. Setbacks are part of the recovery journey. Embrace them and recognize that they're opportunities. Now, once you do that, well, how do you respond to a setback? Well, the way you respond to a setback is the exact same way you respond to your symptoms when you're having a good day, right? When you're having a good day and your symptoms aren't that bad, do I need to tell you, hey, just allow yourself to feel this way? No, when you're feeling okay, when you're feeling relaxed, when the symptoms aren't as intense, when your days are actually a little bit better, it's a lot easier to accept, right? You don't have to be told, hey, let your symptoms be there, stop trying to resist it, right? But what happens when you have a bad day? What happens when you have a setback? Now it's very hard to allow yourself to feel that way because they're so uncomfortable. So what do? Well, you respond to a setback the exact same way you would if you're having a good day. Yeah, now I know it's gonna be tough. You're not gonna be perfect at it, but the goal is, try to respond the best way you can, as if you weren't even having a setback. See, recovery is a lot more about consistency. It's not about doing things differently when anxiety throws different things at you. The key is, can you respond consistently regardless of the storm, regardless of what's going on? Can you stay consistent even when your symptoms are hitting you very hard? That's the key. And so when you experience a setback, respond the best you can. Recognize that all setbacks end. Every single setback ends. Whether you fight it and you drag it on longer than it should because you keep resisting it, or you let it be there, it goes away faster. No matter what, in both situations, it goes away. So recognize that all setbacks will end. So all you need to do is when a setback comes, respond correctly. And then the third thing to do when you're really experiencing a setback is reframe what's going on. What you're experiencing is not anything bad. It's not anything that's showing you that you're doing anything wrong. These are opportunities. Recovery only happens when you're experiencing intense symptoms. There's a couple of places where recovery doesn't happen. Okay, number one is actually these videos. These videos are great to point you in the right direction, but it's not going to help you recover, right? It's knowledge. But knowledge and implementation are key for recovery. You need to be focused on implementing. The second thing is that recovery doesn't happen on the good days. Recovery happens in moments like these, when you're experiencing intense setbacks, when you're experiencing intense physical symptoms, when you're getting intense intrusive thoughts, when you're getting intense derealization, depersonalization. This is where it counts. If you really are focused on healing it, well, you need to experience this, and this is where you break the cycle. This is where you desensitize your nervous system. This is how you respond and show your nervous system there is no threat. If you're truly committed to overcoming this, you have to experience this, and you have to reteach your nervous system. So instead of looking at this as setbacks, look at this as opportunities. One of my biggest mistakes, if I could go back in time when I created this channel, one of the biggest things I wish I would have changed is using the word setback. Because what does setback inherently assume? The fact that you've actually taken a step back and you haven't been focusing on the recovery journey. Now, that's not actually true. It feels like that. It feels like you're making a setback or you're going backwards, but that's not true. But I use the term setback because that's what you're experiencing. But what's happening is when I'm defining the word setback, I'm validating it. The truth is that setbacks are not you going backwards. It's not. And there's a lot of people I know that refuse to use that term because it validates the fact that people think they're going backwards. And if I can go back, I would say, you know what? Don't even use this term setback. Use anything else. Use adjustment period. I like to use it as opportunity. This is what it is, because it truly is an opportunity. So what I would recommend is reframe setbacks. Take it out of your vocabulary. Whether you have a bad day or a setback doesn't matter. No, the response is the same. Instead, don't even call it a bad day. Look at it as all opportunities. When anxiety is there, it's all opportunities. If you can reframe that, now you're going to be making a lot of progress, because anytime you're experiencing intense symptoms, now here's another opportunity to practice. Here's another opportunity to break the cycle. Here's another opportunity to grow. And so that's the key to recovery. So I hope this video really helps. I hope it defines to you what setbacks are, why they happen, and more importantly, what you can do to overcome it, yeah? And so these are some of the things that, as you're going on the recovery journey, are very useful. These principles, these mindsets are very important on the recovery journey, because I always say recovery is about long-term freedom, not short-term comfort. And if you can apply a few of these principles in your recovery journey, this is really gonna help. And this is really what we focus on in the mentorship. When, you know, people are focused on overcoming their symptoms, we're really guiding them through the process, and we're really teaching them and even giving them feedback on how to respond in certain situations, really helping them become their own guide. And so if you're really interested on streamlining this and what I say collapsing time so that you can focus on recovery journey and get out of it quickly so that you can go back to living, well, then I highly recommend applying for the Bye Bye Panic mentorship program. This is the mentorship program where me and my team are guiding people around the world and focusing on helping them overcome their symptoms, going back to living. It's been a privilege of a lifetime. It's probably the best part. You know, these videos are great. I hope you enjoy them. I hope it points you in the right direction. Implementation is the biggest key. And so if you're really feeling like, okay, you might be understanding the concepts, but you're not really sure how to apply it, or you're getting stuck in certain situations, you're having blind spots, the mentorship is a great place to help you overcome your symptoms. So if you're interested, click the link down below. Now, with that said, I actually want to end this video by something new, actually. I'm going to be calling it the subscriber highlight comment of the day, where if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I highly recommend subscribing to the channel and turning on the bell notification so that any video that comes down, any sort of recovery story that comes out, any sort of videos like these that come out, you'll get notified. And if you have any questions or give any comments, comment down below. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm actually going to be reading out some of the comments that's been out there, because I get so many comments every day that I just figured, why not just share it with you guys? And so this comment comes from Will Reyes. Will Reyes says, I discovered you about a month ago and I already feel like I'm slowly getting my life back. I started a new job and been going to the gym every day. Life is good. I no longer have intrusive thoughts, and a lot of my symptoms have slowly went away within a month. Still have a long way to go, but life is good now. So grateful for you. Happy New Year. Yeah, Will, that's awesome, man. And I always say when you're focusing on the recovery journey, once you start understanding the principles, you should start seeing progress fairly quickly. And the key is, and something Will mentioned, is that, you know, he knows that there's a long way to go, but he's making a lot of progress. And a lot of recovery is just knowing that, okay, at least I'm making progress, at least I'm getting better, not focusing on recovery being an end goal, right? Recovery is not outcome dependent. Recovery is about process orientation, meaning the goal of recovery is to enjoy the process. Enjoy this, right? You're gonna keep getting better and better. So instead of looking at this as an end goal, just focus on getting a little bit better. And that seems like that's what Will is doing. And so kudos to Will. Thank you for that comment. And so with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.